Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Rockies Daily. I'm your host, Scott Ayers, where we talk all things Colorado Rockies. We've survived another week, and we're back into the week where you're probably at the job you love, doing the thing that you probably love to do. But if by chance you're at a job that you're pulling your hair out, hopefully you can watch this video and it'll make your day a little bit better. So let's just jump into it and let's talk about the Rockies making another move in this offseason. How about our Colorado Rockies? And this time they go and get outfielder Jake McCarthy. McCarthy really being known as a speedster in the outfield. And once again, Colorado doing something that Josh Burns just said that they were going to do. They were going to raise the floor for this team. They were going to add competition so that they could get the best out of their players, and that's what a move like this does. Getting McCarthy, who didn't necessarily have a stellar year in 2025, but what this does is it takes this already pretty crowded outfield and will now create a very solid competition come spring training. I really do like this move, and they gave up Josh Gross in return, who was in the minor leagues, had about a 5.8 ERA in high A. But really, let's focus on the outfield now, because you have McCarthy, you have Doyle, Moniak, you have now Tyler Freeman, you have Zach Veen, you have multiple guys that will be competing for the three outfield spots. And it will create questions of what will the Rockies do? And for McCarthy, this is a nice opportunity to get a chance to start every day, right? So he will see this as a potential competition opportunity. And so this kind of move just hopefully raises the level of this team. Now, obviously, you could say, hey, this is the one position group where you already have some decent depth. But truthfully, when you're a team that wins 44 games, decent depth doesn't really mean anything. You're going to want to have the best possible players that you can put out there every single day. And making a trade like this will make guys have to earn their stripes, for lack of better terms, right? I'm very curious what it looks like for a guy like Zach Veen, who has been trying to claw into that major league starting lineup and to get into the rhythm and swing of things. He's going to have to prove something in spring training, right? They're not just going to hand these younger guys the keys and say, hey, we've got no one else, good luck. Veen's going to have to actually earn it, and I actually really like that approach. So for McCarthy, he gets an opportunity to hopefully show what he can do. And for the Rockies, there's these questions of what's next, right? We have this 40-man roster. We now have a deep outfield, and there's moves to be made, right? One of which is, could you move someone like Tyler Freeman to first base? Could he be someone that is a utility infielder and outfielder? He can play the outfield. He can play bits of the infield. Is he someone that starts on opening day at first base? It's a real question because he had actually a lot of success in 2025. In reality, that trade with Nolan Jones for Tyler Freeman, the Rockies come out looking pretty okay after that trade. And now they have someone who has versatility, who can play first base, and it gives the Rockies an opportunity to maybe not have to worry about signing a veteran first baseman because you already have someone in Tyler Freeman. So that is obviously a possibility. Another possibility, of course, is once again looking at that Chris Bryant contract and saying, hey, we're at the max for the 40-man roster. We have to make a move. Now you make that contract negotiation agreement where you kind of buy him out and you have that go for the next 5-10 years, right? So you can free up space. There's also the idea of a 2-for-1 trade. Mickey Moniak has been mentioned as a potential trade option for the Rockies. Do you pair him with someone else and go and try to get somebody? And what is that return? These are all questions that the Rockies are going to be asking themselves as we continue to approach spring training and as we approach opening day. There's obviously nothing set in stone, and a decision doesn't need to be made today, but there are still going to be moves made by this front office before the season starts. And it's been fun. It's funny. We really had a really quiet November, and we had a pretty quiet December where we're just kind of waiting for any sort of movement. And then obviously Michael Lorenzen gets signed. You trade for Jake McCarthy. The front office is starting to piece some moves together. And what has been a successful offseason just in terms of how they built the front office, now it's how do we have a successful offseason of who we're bringing in. I mentioned our last show, I really like the Lorenzen signing, and I do think this trade could be very beneficial for the Rockies, depending on what their next few moves are. And so, obviously, it's all different ideas, all different opportunities, but you have to be encouraged that this front office is making moves and just taking chances on different opportunities, because it wasn't like they spent a fortune on Jake McCarthy, right? So it's a chance you're willing to take as they figure out who this core is and what actually works at Coors Field and in this lineup. And then obviously we talk about arbitration, and this is one of the things I was really happy with the Rockies as well, is they avoided arbitration and agreed on contracts with really all the key pieces: Brent Doyle, Mickey Moniak, Ryan Feltner, Tyler Freeman, and then Jimmy Herget as well. So they have all these guys that they're able to just agree, so there isn't any sort of concern heading into the season. There isn't any bad taste in anyone's mouth. They say, hey, let's get these contracts done and let's go play ball. And so obviously they're not giant contracts, right? They're all worth a couple $1 million, but still something to be said. It's a way to actually build that respect between players and front office, vice versa. And so for the Rockies, it's just a very nice benefit to take care of arbitration and not have to worry about it, because we'll kind of mention it in the last segment of what can go wrong in that arbitration period. Now, it will be interesting, right, if some of these guys start to play better and better, if they start to peak and that salary rises, what will that look like then? I think that's when you can start to see what the front office values, what the front office will try to obtain. But in something like this, these are all contracts that make sense, and they're all guys that are going to be productive in 2026. And so you don't really even have to think twice about these contracts. None of them you look at like, oh my gosh, why would you offer something like that? Instead, it's all pretty much a matter of fact, right? So nothing to be too concerned about the contract signed. It's just another solid move by this front office, which I think has been kind of the summary of the offseason so far. So, hey, that was a pretty solid move, right? That's the phrase that I think most Rockies fans are saying. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty solid. So that's what the grade is of the offseason, is it was a pretty solid offseason. That's a great start into this rebuild for the Rockies, because we look around the MLB and there's a ton of different movement, and I think it's important to see what's going on in the MLB and how the Rockies can both mirror those things and also stay away from these things, right? You look at Skubal, who with the Tigers are essentially lowballing him. It's a $13 million discrepancy where the Tigers say, hey, you're only worth $19 million. Skubal says, no, I'm worth $32 million. And we'll find out what the ruling is in February. But what an interesting disagreement there, where you have the best pitcher in baseball and you're not willing to pay him. You're obviously looking to deal him. And so the lens on that is, I would say, not great for the Tigers, because they're wanting this king's ransom as a return, but they're not even willing to pay the guy. So, hey, teams, look, we want all this. He's only worth $19 million. A real ace is worth the money he's asking for. That's a real ace money, 32. He's worth $19 million. We want everything in return. So it just feels really cheap overall from the Tigers and just their approach with it, especially because all of us have eyes. We have seen him pitch, and he is so clearly worth the money that he's asking for. And so it's just interesting, and it's something that the Rockies will note, right, is not just you should pay your best players, but two, it's like, what is the perception from everyone else in the league, right? Fans, other front offices, so on and so forth. So just a really interesting approach by the Tigers that it just feels like there's a big ball of fire in their hand, and they're just wanting to see how much they can burn them at this point. It's crazy. And you go from the Tigers to the Chicago Cubs, which they're doing what every team should do that has an opportunity to compete for a World Series. They went out and got two guys. They traded for Edward Cabrera, who we've talked about on the show. That would have been a fun just ace for the Rockies. Instead, he just makes that rotation a lot better in Chicago. And then, of course, they sign Alex Bregman, which, for the Red Sox, they continue to have just a woeful offseason. They haven't signed anyone. They lose Bregman. The front office for the Red Sox were upset because they wanted Bregman to sign with them, even though they offered $10 million less. And so it's encouraging to see, these different players go different places. And as a Rockies fan, you look at what some teams do, and you almost wish that the Rockies did this in 2017, 2018, was make trades that clearly make a team better, right? Not just sign a couple relievers or whatever. Go and make trades that in the offseason that will make you very competitive. And that's what the Cubs did right here. Where, look, the Dodgers will always be the Dodgers. You will always have someone very good that you have to compete with, but you have to at least try. And that's what Chicago is doing. They're set up to have a lot of success. They're set up to be very competitive for who knows how long. And there's a real opportunity to beat the LA Dodgers. Because obviously you have to look at beating everyone, right? The Brewers in their own division made it to the NLCS. But right now it's how do we beat this Death Star of a team in the LA Dodgers? And you go and get talent. And that's what the Cubs did. And down the road, that's what the Rockies will need to do if they build this thing properly. We don't want to be sitting here in 5 years saying, hey, they're still trying to rebuild. In 5 years, we want to say, hey, how can they make a trade to compete for a World Series? Which isn't crazy. The Rockies shouldn't have to rebuild for 15 years, be good for a year, rebuild for 15. It can be done a little bit quicker. Regardless, obviously, you see some of these other news. Bo Bichette's still available. Maybe he goes to Boston. And then my favorite, Max Kepler, suspended 80 games for using PEDs. It's just like, Max, what are you doing? You already struggled last year. And now it turns out you're also on PEDs. You're getting roided up. It's tough. It's just not what you love to see. There's nothing really to relate there for Rockies news other than let's not use PEDs this year, fellas. Right? We're going to win 55 games. No need to juice. Let's just play some good old baseball. But until then, I'm Scott Ayers. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day, and I will see you tomorrow.